We are in a series called Back to the Basics. So I know, we're done school. We finally got a summer kind of COVID-free, so we can kind of go back to what we normally have done. Party my life away, do all the fun things. And I'm excited for all those things. But sometimes we can forget who we are. And so I wanted to kind of bring us back to the basics, bring us back to who we are as human beings and who God's actually created us to be. And part of that is we're going to spend the next few weeks really just learning about different aspects of what it means to actually just be a human being and how God actually created us and why some of the things that we do or don't do really matter. And so one of the aspects I actually wanted to focus on is prayer. So what does prayer mean? How does it actually impact our lives and the Bible? It's what we call a spiritual discipline, reading God's word and praying. And if you're a Christian, you've heard that a ton of times, probably your whole life. If you're not really a Christian, you probably heard Christians do those things. Read the Bible and pray. But what does that actually mean in our lives? How do we actually use those things as Christ followers? And what's ironic is that today, of all days, I could not use my computer to prepare what I normally do for Fridays because I have Rogers everything. And the Rogers internet in this church and the Rogers internet on my phone, none of it was working. So I could not access any of my stuff, which means I had to go back and rewrite today from scratch, which means God led me in a different path, and I actually had to crack open a physical Bible for once and actually highlight portions of it so I didn't forget it so that I can write it out on my notes. And part of that actually was kind of ironic because I'm talking about God's word and I'm really bringing that into focus. And so God actually, in an ironic way, used that as an example for me to bring me back to a place of basics, back to the basics, back to a physical Bible for myself. And I actually want to talk about a very unique story in the Bible that I don't know if a lot of people focus on. I don't know if a lot of people think about. It's kind of a weird story, and I can understand why people don't talk about it because it can kind of get controversial in a way. We're not gonna start controversy here today, but it can be controversial because people can look at it and say well, I don't really believe this story. But actually, as I did work on this, I really believe that God was speaking to me in a totally different way when it comes to prayer. But how many of you remember back in the day, and this will be hard for a lot of you because most of you are 2000 babies, correct? How many of you were born in the 2000s? So gross. I feel weird because I'm born in the 80s. I'm an 89 baby. So many of you might not really remember, cable TV without DVR, right? Any of you remember that? Life where you actually watch cable, not with the internet, like cable. So the older ones are putting their hands up. The 90s babies are putting their hands up. Okay, where you could not pause TV, you did not have Netflix, you could not binge a show. What was on TV was how you watched it, right? But how many of y'all remember when you had to go to the bathroom and there was just, you knew you couldn't, you just had to find a window where you could, sneak back in? Or you waited for the commercial break and you knew that was maybe 20 or 30 seconds and you just had to, book it and come back, right? And then DVR came into the picture. How many of you love that? Where you could pause live TV, and that was game changer, where you could pause live TV, go and do your thing and come back. Well, that's actually what one of these stories in the Bible is actually about, where God actually pauses in a story, pauses life at a standstill, in a complete standstill. And it's a very, very cool story, but it teaches me a lot about who God is and how powerful he is and actually who he is in our lives. And if we're willing to actually understand and utilize his word and prayer, God can actually do some really incredible things in our lives. So I actually want to find ourselves in the book of Joshua. But before I get into that, I don't know if I've bought you enough time to actually do that. Perfect. But before I get into the book of Joshua, I actually want to give you a backstory on who Joshua is, because maybe some of you might not know who Joshua is. So Joshua is a book in the Bible. This is a Bible, for those of you who don't know what it is. Okay, split up into two sections, Old Testament, New Testament. How many knew what the Old Testament is? Okay, why is it called the Old Testament? Maxine, because I just saw you put here. Or did I just put you on the spot here? Did I put you on the spot or no? Okay, go ahead, answer it. Why is it called the Old Testament? Perfect, because the Old Testament is everything that happened before Jesus was born. So why is it called the New Testament then? Thank you, very simple. It's everything that from after Jesus was born. Okay? So Joshua is a person in the Bible that we find in the Old Testament. So why is it in the Old Testament? Because it was before who? Jesus was born. So he's a character in the Bible that we find that follows Moses. Moses is the guy, and I'm sure many of you know who Moses is. He leads the people from Egypt to what God says is the promised land. All the Israelites that are in Egypt, God's just like, hey, those are my people. I want them no longer to be slaves. Moses, I'm going to tell you to go to Pharaoh, tell him to let go of all my people. So he takes them all, gets to the Red Sea, says, split waters, and the waters split, and he takes them across the waters, and they're in the desert. But Moses never actually got to the promised land. It was actually Joshua who took over from Moses and took him to the promised land. So it's kind of like, if you go to this church, the lead pastor is Blake. So it's kind of like Blake was Moses, okay? And he's leading, and then all of a sudden he dies because he got old, okay? And then John, who's this, another guy that's here, takes over, and then he takes the rest into the promised land. It's not like that, but that's kind of what it was. Joshua was the second in command to Moses. And so when Moses died and was taken up to heaven, Joshua took over from Moses to lead his people, God's people, into the promised land. And so that's who he was, and that's what he was trying to do. So when he got there, all of a sudden, there's a bunch of people that live in those lands. So even though God said, here's the promised land, there's people there. So that's kind of like us saying, oh, look, God said the promised land is America. So we're all going to go across to Buffalo, and we're going to claim that territory as ours. What do you think the Americans are going to do? Fight back. So guess what happened to all the people who were living in the promised land? They started to fight back or wanted to fight back. So one tribe or one nation there, the Gibeonites, decided to make a peace treaty with Joshua and his people. But the other kingdoms, there's about 5 other kingdoms, they kind of saw that Joshua was not coming to really make peace, but probably come to take over. So they kind of got a little fearful, and they started to say, like, you know what? Let's all band together, 5 of us, 5 kings, 5 nations. If we all come together, it just makes sense. We're going to overwhelm this new, people that are coming here. And they're partnering with this city. We can take them. 5 versus 2, that's easy math. We're going to win. And that's kind of what they decided they wanted to do. They wanted to kind of make this super army so they can push back the Gibeonites and Joshua and the Israelites back so that they would not claim territory in what God had given them. And this is kind of where I'm picking up the story of Joshua. So I'm kind of giving you this kind of like the super summary of where Joshua is. He's come into the promised land. He's made a peace treaty with one of the nations there, the Gibeonites. And then the 5 other kingdoms are looking at them saying, we don't want these guys around. We don't want their culture. We don't want them here. This is our land. We're staying here. But God has given this land to the Israelites. And so Joshua is looking to do what God's asked him to do. And this is where we kind of find our portion of Scripture. So we're going to read from Joshua chapter 10, verses 6 to 9. And then I'm going to skip down into verse 12 after that. Go ahead, GP. You can put that up. So the Gibeonites then sent word to Joshua in the camp of Gilgal. It says, do not abandon your servants. Come to us quickly and save us. Help us, because all the Amorite kings from the hill country have joined forces against us. So Joshua marched up from Gilgal with his entire army, including all the best fighting men. The Lord said to Joshua, do not be afraid of them. I have given them into your hand. Not one of them will be able to withstand you. After an all-night march from Gilgal, Joshua took them by surprise. So I want to pause there for a second. So what we read here, we see the Gibeonites needed help because they made a peace treaty with Joshua and his army. All the other nations looked and said, you're a traitor, so we're gonna destroy you. We're gonna overtake your lands and your people. We're gonna make your women and children our slaves. Okay, we're gonna kill all your men, and we're gonna take you into our kingdoms. So they asked Joshua and his army, the Israelites, to come to their aid. And so we see God working with Joshua because Joshua went all night to get to battle. And we see that God overthrew the army into confusion. And he kind of messed up all their plans. So God actually went before Joshua. So the whole army was kind of confused, and all of a sudden Joshua and his army took them by surprise. And what's really cool is if you keep reading later on in it, and I don't really kind of want to focus here because the next few verses where I want to focus on is that they kind of run away, they flee, and we see that God actually causes a hailstorm of stone to fall on them. So God's actually ahead of this battle before Joshua and his army even really do anything. And that's not even really the weird part of this story. So as we continue down, we see Joshua actually do one of these really, really incredible things. We see him try to take this battle. He's come into it, he's kind of gone all night and caught them by surprise during the day, and God's really winning this battle for them. But then all of a sudden, it's starting to get dark because the day's raging on, and they're winning this battle, and God's doing this incredible work for them. But the battle wasn't finished, and the sun was starting to go down. But what's really interesting in biblical battle times, see, we take this for granted, but in those times, there was no lights. There was no torches. There were no things where you can just make a fire right away. So when you were in the middle of battle during the day, you're not really worried about the fact that it's getting dark. I should set up my light post so that we have light so we can see what we're doing. In fact, it's common that when armies are fighting and it got dark, they actually retreated back to their kingdoms and planned for the next day of battle. Because at night you can't fight. You can't see anything. You don't know what you're doing. It's confusing. You can't call battle plans. You don't know what's going on. So we take light and all these things for granted, but in that time, there just wasn't, in a massive field with thousands of people, you're just not going to have any light at night. So you can't actually do battle. So a lot of armies would actually kind of fight up until the point where they knew that, okay, we have to retreat. It's getting too dark. We're just going to kind of regroup, and we're going to come back and go strong again. But see, Joshua actually knew that if the sun set and they had to retreat, then that battle wasn't going to be over, and he was going to have to pick it up tomorrow. And that could have taken months or years to accomplish, because they would have gone back into their kingdoms, back into their strongholds, back into their big cities, and they would be fighting forever. But what Joshua saw that God could do in a moment, this is what's really cool about who Joshua is. And he said something really, really incredible. In verse 12, so we dropped down to verse 12, it says, "On the day the Lord gave the Amorites over to Israel, Joshua said to the Lord in the presence of Israel, 'Sun, stand still over Gibeon, and you, moon, over the valley of Elon.' So the sun stood still, and the moon stopped, till the nation avenged itself on its enemies, as it is written in the book of Yehar. The sun stopped in the middle of the sky and delayed going down about a full day. There has never been a day like this before or since, and a day when the Lord listened to a human being. Surely the Lord was fighting for Israel." So Joshua saw the sun setting, knew that if the sun set, we're going to have to retreat, they're going to have to retreat, and we're going to have to restart this battle over again. So all the advantages that we just took, we caught them by surprise. They're kind of in retreat. They're losing men by the hundreds and thousands, and our little army versus this 5 kingdom army is winning. But if they retreat, they're going to come back stronger. And he kind of looked at this, and he prayed a very, very incredible prayer. And God literally grabbed his cosmic little remote, DVR remote, and said, click. All right, we're just going to stop the day. The sun ain't going to set. The sun's just going to stand still. Boop. Because Joshua prayed it. And I look at myself, and I reflect on this story, and I think, man, what does it take? And this is what I thought. What does it take for somebody at the core of who they are to really believe and have boldness to ask God to make the sun stand still? To literally say, okay, God, the sun is going to stand still. God, make the sun stand still so that we can win this battle. What possesses somebody at the core of who they are to literally pray and believe for something like that? And before we kind of get into practicals and how we can apply this into our lives, I know all of you are literally sitting there looking at me, especially all these smart ones that, do science and all that stuff, and you're like, well, John, you know that the sun actually does not set on anything. The earth rotates around the sun, John. Right? That's what science tells me. And I know some of y'all are looking at me saying those things, or at least in your minds you're saying those things. And I can't give you an exact answer to that. All I know is we don't know how God did it. That's all I can tell you. And there's tons and tons of research around. There's tons of articles, tons of things that people have researched on how this could have actually happened to give a reasonable explanation. Maybe God used an eclipse or used some light refraction off a fog onto the battlefield. And some people say, maybe God literally opened the veils of heaven and the glory of the Lord shone down on the people. There's tons of things that people have said out there. Or maybe literally God let the sun stand still and it didn't move. We don't know how God did this. But here's what I know, is that all of creation bows down to God because he made it. He created it. The universe, the solar system, all of it bows down to him because he created it. And what seems like supernatural to you and me is very natural for somebody who created it. So God's the creator. It's natural for him. It's supernatural to us because we didn't make it. Just like it is very natural for you to take out your phone and Google something. And you get the answer like this. But 30, 40, 50, 60 years ago, that would have seemed like supernatural. In fact, if you were probably in the Middle Ages, you would have been called a witch if you pulled out your little iPhone and Googled something. Because it would have been magic. Supernatural. So what seems supernatural to us is natural to God. This is nothing to God. But here's the danger sometimes. We can take things that we may not understand and use them as an excuse to hide from the things we do understand. So sometimes we look at things like this in the Bible and we kind of brush it under the rugs and say, you know what? That doesn't make sense. I don't understand how that could work. So I really don't believe in God. God doesn't really work in my life. I can just do whatever I want. But the real question shouldn't be, well, how did God do this? I actually want to flip it and say, how should we respond to a story like this? And here's what Joshua is telling me in one kind of huge takeaway from the story. God does the miracle, and that's what sometimes we focus on. But Joshua prayed an audacious prayer. Joshua prayed an incredible prayer. He prayed a bold prayer. He asked for bold things. And he did that in front of all the nations. He did that in front of Israel. He didn't do that privately. He didn't do that inside his heart and just kind of say, okay, God, I hope you make the sun set. He prayed that out loud, and he was bold in his ask. And just like Joshua, there are things in our lives that feel out of control, but we can pray audacious and bold prayers. There are places where it feels like in your life the sun is setting down on you. But God is saying that he can take care of that for you. He can have the sun stand still in your lives. And there's nothing too big or too small for God. Are you willing to pray audacious prayers, bold prayers? But if you're anything like me, over time, my prayers start to shrink. They start to become small. We go through life and we start to kind of go through the motions and problems and fears of different things, and our prayers start to get small and small and smaller, and we start to pray kind of under our breath, and you're probably like, what are you talking about, John? It's kind of like this. Maybe you're on your way to school and you're kind of thinking like, oh, please let not there, I hope there's no quiz today. Hopefully my teacher's away. I didn't do my homework. I didn't do that assignment. Hopefully there's a sub. Maybe you're on your way home and some of y'all late for curfew, right? Some of y'all said you were coming here on Friday night, but you went and did something else. So you're trying to sneak home now and be like, oh, I hope my parents didn't call John and ask what time I'm getting home. Or, if you're anything like me, you're driving down the road, you see that cop, and you're just like, I hope you don't pull me over. Because half the time, either I'm not wearing my seatbelt, it's like 90% of the time, or I'm on my phone, or I'm probably going over the speed limit. It's one of those three, mostly a combination of all of it. So I prayed those prayers. Oh, I hope I don't get pulled over. And we've all kind of prayed these quick little one-liner prayers. And if we're being honest, we really all have stuff inside of us that we're facing that are bigger than it seems like anyone can do anything about. And sometimes we just kind of sweep that under the rug. We don't really want to face it. We don't want to talk about it. We don't want to deal with it. We just kind of push it to the side. Maybe we're watching the sun set over our families when things are falling apart in our families. Maybe we're watching the sun set on ourselves and our character. You're making bad decisions. You feel stuck in them. And by the way, we can all look at each other. I just want to be honest here, okay? We can all look at each other and rationalize with one another about the things that we do. But deep down, you know when you're doing something right and when you're doing something wrong. That's the cool thing about ourselves. We actually know when we're doing something right and wrong. We can rationalize it all we want. We can just say like, well, no, I'm doing this because, this person did this to me. Well, I just go to parties because, this person hurt me. So I'm just like, I'm living my life. I'm doing whatever I want. This person broke up with me, so I'm just hooking up with whoever I want to hook up with. But deep down, if you're honest with yourself, you really know when you're doing something right and when you're doing something wrong. So sometimes we let the sun set on our character, and we feel like we're stuck and we're trapped. Maybe we're watching the sun set on our futures because we don't know what we want to do next. Maybe you feel pressured. For some of you that went into university, college, you feel pressured to do certain things, to take certain programs, because maybe you have expectations on you by your parents, Or maybe you set some expectations on yourself in grade 9, and now you're like, okay, well, I said I was going to do that, and now I got to do this. And you don't really know what to do. Maybe it all feels bigger. Maybe you're watching the sun set on your state of mind, your anxiety and depression, and the darkness is coming in faster than you can kind of claw your way back to yourself and back to the light, so to speak. We all need the sun to stand still in some of these situations. And the cool thing about this part in the Bible, in looking at the landscape of our lives, is that when we pray audacious and bold prayers, you can believe God for the big things. You can believe God for incredibly big things. But the question is, how do we do that? Because as our prayers shrink, as we only start to only do the little things, oh, my quiz, this, that, so does our view of God. That's why sometimes it feels like we can't pray. It feels like, I'm too shy to pray. I don't want to pray. Oh, I don't know how to pray. Because we've started to shrink our view of God. Because we only believe that maybe he can only do little things. God maybe doesn't care about the big things in my life. Like, he's too busy, right? He doesn't care about that. But here's the 3 things that Joshua is really teaching me, and I hope that I can teach you these things. The first thing is you got to pray like you know who you're talking to. See, Joshua prayed an incredibly bold and audacious prayer because he knew who he was talking to. He knew it. It's kind of like this, like, Jadaz, I'm going to use you for example. You cool? Can I borrow $5,000? Yeah? If you had it. Okay, but you don't have it. Okay. So, realistically, I'm not going to ask Jadaz for $5,000. Any of you would? Okay, of course you would, Praise, and of course you would, Maxine. Huh? You would too. Okay. But be realistic. We're not really going to ask Jadaz for $5,000. Why? Because we kind of know that that's probably a little ridiculous. Like, he's probably not even going to loan it if he had it, because what would you have done with it? Bought a car if you had it, correct? Yeah, okay, that's what you were telling me in the car, right? Sometimes you got to know who the person is. So the reason why Marvin can wait till 7:30 to ask me for a ride is because he knows me. He knows that I'm going to do it. I'm going to jump when he says, jump, and I'm going to say, how high? Marvin knows that. So he'll call me at 7:30 or 7 o'clock. Where is he? He's up there somewhere, right? He left? Okay, see, he left. So he calls me at 7 and leaves early. Look at that. Okay, so someone can tell him that I called him out. Because Marvin knows that I will pick him up. I'm the fool that will actually leave everything and go get him. So he knew. But when we know who we're talking to, we can ask for things, crazy, bold things. Marvin is bold enough to ask me, can you pick me up at 7:30? Because he knows me. He knows that I'll do it. Some of you are probably a little bit more afraid, and you won't ask me to do that. Because you might think, like, John's going to say no, and he's just going to think I'm an idiot, or he's going to go off on me. But see, Marvin knows me, so he's bold and audacious enough to ask. The second thing is we got to know who we're talking to. And God is so good. In Ephesians chapter 3, verses 20, it says, now to him who is able to do immeasurably more than all we can ask or imagine, according to his power that is work within us. Immeasurably more. What does that mean? What does that mean? What does immeasurably more mean? You hear it. You're hearing it as a word. I want you to really think about it. What does it mean? Immeasurably more. Define it for me, somebody. Come on. More than you, thank you, more than you can measure. Immeasure. Like, it is really, realistically, it's not measurable. Like, you cannot measure how big God is, how big he is for you. He can do way more. You cannot even measure how much more he can do for you. Like, you're wanting this, God is saying, I can do this in your life. You cannot even measure what God can do in your life. When you know him, you can do and pray audacious prayers. See, Joshua had a long relationship with God and with Moses. He watched Moses and God do miracle after miracle through Moses. So Joshua stepped into that place and said, I know this God because I've watched him. I know the relationship he had with Moses. I want that kind of relationship. I want to be used like that. See, Joshua knew he was talking to. He knew who God was, and he knew he could trust him and ask him to do what was best for his people. So when the sun is setting and you don't know how or what to pray for, trust in the nature of God. Trust in who God is and who he says he is. This is a beautiful book. You have it all on your phones. If you're not with Rogers today, you can access it. If you're with Rogers, I have a physical copy for you. But this book is beautiful because this is the nature of God is right here revealed to you in words. He wrote it down for you, and it's spanned over 2,000 years as the best-selling book in the world. Most copies existed ever because it's who he is. It's his nature. He wants us to know him. And when we know him, when we look at it, when we open this word, when we can read it, when we can study it, he says incredible things to us. Right here today, I read in Proverbs chapter 2, it says, "My son or daughter, if you accept my words and store up my commands within you, turning your ear to wisdom and applying your heart to understanding, and if you call out for insight and cry aloud for understanding, and if you look for it as silver and search for it as hidden treasure, then you will understand the fear of the Lord and find the knowledge of God. For the Lord gives wisdom, from his mouth comes knowledge and understanding. He holds victory in store for the upright. He's a shield to those who walk and is blameless, for he guards the course of the just and protects the ways of his faithful ones. Then you will understand what is right and just and fair, every good path. For wisdom will enter your heart, and knowledge will be pleasant in your soul. Discretion will protect you, and understanding will guard you." When you know God, when you understand his word, he protects you. You get to know him. You get to know how things work. You get to actually know what is fair and just and right. And God's saying in his word, when you know me, when you spend time with me, you can pray to me and I will do incredible things for you. And God can do more in a moment than he can do in a lifetime. It's incredible. If your prayers require something bigger than you, then you're the right size for God. You got to pray like you know who you're talking to. Pray like you know what he can do. See, my favorite verse in this passage was verse 14, where it says, "Surely God was fighting for his Israel." It's kind of a quick statement, but I kind of want to be known that God was fighting for me. When I leave this life, I want to be known that God was fighting for me. But God is fighting for you. Think about that. Let that settle in for 2 seconds. God is fighting for you on his agenda. He's fighting for all your bad habits. He's fighting for every brokenness that exists in your life. You don't have to ask God for healing for your family because he's fighting for you on that. You don't have to wonder if he's going to do it. You just have to come to him. He wants to. It's in his agenda to fight for your physical and mental health, for your purity, for your friends and families to know him, for your provision, for your community, for you to impact the world around you. God cares about you, and he's fighting for you. It's in his nature. You got to be willing to open your mouth and pray. You got to be willing to say audacious prayers. You got to be willing to be bold about your ask, about the things in your life, the things that you're struggling with, the things that you want answers to. Maybe you don't know why you're on this planet. Maybe you don't know your purpose. Ask God. He is good and bold enough to let the sun stand still. He's going to answer you on why you matter and why you exist and why he put you here. You got to be willing to be bold and audacious with your prayers. And the last thing is, you got to pray like you know what's at stake. See, even if God doesn't come and make the sun stand still in your situations, he can calm the storm in your life. See, that guy right over there, Dave, he's walking. It's perfect timing, by the way. Thank you. I appreciate it. Can I talk your business for 2 seconds? Is that cool? See, you wouldn't know this unless you're talking to him. You wouldn't know this unless you have a conversation. You wouldn't know what's going on in his life. But my man can't even work legally for the last 2 months because he's waiting on the government to get him his permit, right? To get the work permit so that it switches for your job. Your job can't even legally employ you until you have that, correct? So you were working, and then he couldn't work because it ran out, and the government's taking its sweet time to do it. What do you think happens when Dave can't work? No money. What do you think happens when he has no money? No place to live. No food on the table. See, some of y'all are so worried about spending $300 on sneakers. Sorry, I'm not putting anybody on blast. I've done it myself. So I bought a bike, okay? So I'm putting myself on blast, all right? And some are here waiting on God to provide just the necessities. So Dave, for the last 2 months, had to figure it out, had to make it work, just do what he can to just get rent. And yet, he's here. Yet, he's showing up. Yet, he's involved. Yet, he's doing the things that's on his heart. Yet, he's being responsible for the yes that he gave. And not just saying, you know what, John, I can't do this anymore. I can't care about RY. You know, those students don't care about my problems, so why should I care about theirs? I got bigger things to deal with in my life. He has never once said that to me while dealing with all the things that he had to deal with. And sometimes God may not make the sun stand still, but he can calm the storm in your soul. Sometimes God will use his power to stop the sun, but sometimes he'll use his presence to calm our souls. I've seen God rescue people with his power in circumstances that are just incredible. But I've also seen God rescue people with his presence and just calming us and just letting us soak in who he is. And that's not a cop-out. It's not a reason to not pray big and audacious prayers. But sometimes his presence is the miracle. Sometimes just being with him, knowing that he's there, knowing that he's just around us is the miracle that gives us the ability to keep going for when that moment comes. Because Dave should have left this country May 29th. In January, you were told you had no options. So in January, his lawyer said, like, buddy, there's really no options for you. You're going to have to leave and go back to Nigeria. That you haven't been back since you were 11. Right? Something like that? 16, sorry. And you're 24, 5? 27. Well, I got that wrong. So more than 10 years, you haven't been back. Life's different in Nigeria. 10 years, right? You've gotten used to a little bit of Canadian lifestyle, right? As much as you want to claim Nigeria, you're probably a little bit more Canadian than Nigerian right now. And your lawyer told you in January you had no options. That's what he said verbatim, right? When you talked to me, your lawyer said there is no options. You're going back, prepare for it. And yet here you are in July, and it hasn't come through yet, but you ain't get kicked out yet. See, God made the sun stand still for his May date. And it may not seem like it's coming through yet, but it's right on time, in God's time. God knows when that time is right. And right now, it's a presence. It's God's presence to keep the storm calm, while he waits on God to make that sun stand still. Dave's had to be audacious in his prayers, be bold in his prayers, and ask God to do a miracle, literally a miracle when nothing else seemed possible. Yet, God is immeasurably more than we could ever ask or imagine. And God says that I can do more than you can think I can do. And when I told you in January that you weren't going anywhere, nothing's changed. The circumstances are a little bit different, but nothing's changed. Dave's not going anywhere. He just isn't. I just believe God in his word and who he is and what he says he is. He's the only one who keeps a promise. And he says if we come to him and we know him and we pray and believe, God does incredible things. He fights for us. He is on our side. He knows us best. So, when we're talking about back to the basics, man, like some of y'all got things going on in your lives. And I can tell because some of y'all act like you got things going on in your lives. You get a little bit, you know the surefire sign when something's going on in your life? You get a little bit selfish. You start to think about just yourself and what matters to you. Oh, John, if you ain't going to come out of your way to pick me up, I ain't going to come to youth. Like, I need you to come to youth, by the way, like it's some token if you're here. Sometimes you can get a little selfish. I can get a little selfish when we start to think about ourselves first, when we start to move out of the place of what God can do for us versus what he should and will do for us. See, today, I really struggled today. I'm going to just admit to you, straight up. Because I had no access to the world, essentially. And by not having access to the world, for me, my job, my provision for how I live, costs me hundreds of dollars, if not thousands sometimes, depending on the day. Because I lose contracts, I lose ability to make money, I lose that potential deal that's been setting play for months and months, and just that one day of no contact can ruin it, just like that. And that weighs on my mind. That weighed on my mind all day because I had no way to contact any of my clients. I had no way to contact any of my potential clients. I had 2 meetings today, had no way to let them know figure out my way of doing this. Say, okay, well, I got to do this. I got to figure this out. Forget everybody else. I got to do me. And as I was prepping this, God reminded me, hey, pray audacious prayers. Pray big prayers. Pray bold prayers. Why don't you believe that I got your clients? Why don't you believe that I can work on their hearts? Why don't you ask for the sun to stand still on their lives so that when you can talk to them, I got them. Maybe they'll actually say yes rather than you coaxing them and working them for months and months. So I had to do that. I had to pray incredible prayers today. I had to ask for big things of God and say, you know what, God, today I lost business. Today I lost the ability to make money, but I'm trusting you anyway. I'm going to put my faith in you. I'm going to pray and believe that you've already got my yes on this. You got my yes for this client. You're going to bring this business to me. You're going to work this out for me because I've been doing it for months. I've been giving everything I have, so you're going to bring it for me. I'm asking for the sun to stand still on this. And maybe by next month, I can tell you that God did those things. Because that's what I believe. I believe God can do those things because I know I spent time in His Word to know His character, to know that He cares about me. He cares about my business. He cares about my livelihood. He cares about the things that I do and the things that I'm into. And God cares about all your stuff. Yes, even your sneakers. He cares about those things. I've been picking on you all day. I apologize. Maybe I'm just jealous. Who knows? But God cares about you. He cares about your passions. He cares about your deep desires. He cares about all the things you're into. Yeah, He cares about your car too. Yeah, I'm looking at you. Yeah, you want a car? I'm looking at you. With the ponytail. Yes, you. He cares about you. But are you willing to pray and believe for the big things? Are you willing to ask and trust that He can actually come through for you? I dare you to do it. I dare you to ask Him. That's how much I trust God and know who He is. I dare you to ask Him for the big things in your life. I dare you to, the brokenness that you've been struggling with, that you've been trying to talk to your friends, and by talking to your friends, you think you're working it out, but you know it only getting worse. It just causes more drama. So much so that you could probably make a TV show and make real money on it because there's just so much drama in your life. I dare you to bring that to God. I dare you to actually pray and say, God, I'm struggling with this. I'm being bullied here. These people are talking about me being my back, and this is how it makes me feel. I really want this to change, God, and I'm bringing it to you. I dare you to pray that. I dare you to pray. All you who are in grade 12 that are now going up to university, I dare you to pray. Man, because I know some of y'all struggling with this. I'm not trying to put you on blast, not like any of you said this to me. Man, I'm about to step into something new, and I don't know what it's going to look like. And I'm scared. I dare you to pray and release that to Him. I dare you to say, God, I want the strength and the boldness to go in and be who I'm called to be and not shy away. Not feel like I'm not the smartest person. Not feel like I can't do well. I dare you to pray that. Because I really believe God answers those things. I really believe God gives you the confidence to be who He's called you to be. I dare you to pray. I'm coming right in right here. When you offended at somebody and you're just trying to walk away from that situation, you're trying not to talk to them, you're just trying to avoid them. I dare you to pray and say, am I in the wrong here? Or am I willing to actually work this out? Do I care enough about this person as a human being to really work this out with them? I dare you to pray it. See how God changes your heart on it. Because trust me, if anybody in this building can hold a grudge, it's me. I have credentials on this. Long list of people I've held grudges against. But as I get to know who God is, and as I pray to Him, man, God changes the nature on it. He changes my nature on it. Because He's making me someone more like Him. And as I release those things, man, I'm experiencing way more content, way more joy, way more peace. And I'm comfortable with who I am. Even if I don't have it all, even if I don't get to be it all, I'm comfortable with who I am. So, back to the basics. What does that look like? It starts by getting back to who God is. It starts by getting back to, maybe some of y'all have never opened a Bible before, app or physical. Some of you probably never opened a physical Bible before because you're just so tech. But I'm going to challenge you. Challenge you on this right here. Crack it open. Start somewhere. I'd actually encourage you to start in the book of Matthew. That's in the middle, by the way, first book of the New Testament. Because sometimes you start in the Old Testament and it just gets a little confusing. So I'm actually going to challenge you to start there. The life of Jesus, that's what the book of Matthew starts with. His whole life, 33 years. Okay? Honestly, I'll be real, it's kind of like a Netflix show, but in a book. And I think they made a movie about it. It's called The Passion of the Christ. And they made lots of movies around it. It's got drama, it's got murder, it's got sex. Yeah, that's right, Bible's got sex. Some of y'all didn't know, there's a book around sex in the Bible. Some of y'all didn't know that, did you? Kabir's like, really? Song of Solomon's. They're about to look it up, okay? You're going to see the word bosom a lot in there, so just so you know. But I dare you to try this. I dare you to get to know who God is. I dare you to open your mouth and pray. I dare you to talk to him. Because I'm telling you, man, there's nothing like it when we get back to the basis of who God is and what he does starts to do in our lives and start to change who we are, start to transform us and renew us and make us to the people that we're called to be. It starts to become less about us and more about others. It's why half, if not half, all of your leaders do what they do here. They're doing this not for them, they're doing this for you because they want to see you grow. They want to see you succeed. They care about your grades because they want you to thrive. They care about the stuff you're into because they want you to grow and feel respected and comfortable in life. They care about you. It has nothing to do with them. They get nothing out of this, by the way. There's no glory for any of the leaders, by the way. Like, really, there isn't. Outside of high fives and thank yous from me and maybe a gas card from time to time. That's about it. But there's nothing else. They're doing this because I really believe, and I think I'm speaking for the leaders for you guys, but they know God's word. They know who he is. And so they're willing to be transformed by him. So that's my challenge to you. Are you willing to let God into some of those areas and pray audacious and bold prayers? And believe that he can actually let the sun stand still on your lives, on those things that you're struggling with, things that you're going through. Because that's the kind of God that I serve. That's the kind of God I know exists. It's the kind of God that works in my life. It's the kind of God that when I don't chase money, yet he still brings me all my stuff. Yeah, that's why I have a bike out there, because I wanted one. And God's good enough to provide it for me. And I don't have to chase money to do it, to get everything that I really ever want in life. God's just that good to me. He cares about the things that I care about, selfishly. Are you willing to give him a chance? Are you willing to really let him try? Why don't you bow your heads with me? God, I just thank you, God, for who you are, Lord. I thank you, God, that you're good. I thank you, God, that you are so big and powerful in our lives, God, that you actually fight on behalf of us. You fight for all the things that we struggle with, all the things that we go through, all the things that we could go through in life. That you're willing to tackle it and do battle for us so that we don't even have to get in the battle. And I pray tonight for every single student here, God, and every single leader here. And God, every one of us has things that we struggle with. That might be small to other people, but it might be big to us. But God, you care about every single thing that we struggle and we go through. And whatever that is tonight, I pray, God, that we are willing to let you work a miracle in our lives, God. We're willing to let the sun stand still so that the battle can be won in that area of our life, God. And whatever that is for any student or any leader here tonight, God, I pray, God, that we are willing and courageous enough to say it and trust you with it and ask for your help and believe that you can do a miracle. Believe that you can make the sun stand still, Lord. I pray, God, that your presence, God, will be enough and be comforting and satisfying to our souls. I pray, God, that when we turn to you, God, that you would just reveal to us, God, the path. Reveal to us, God, that you're looking out for us. Reveal to us, God, the peace, God, that surpasses all understanding, that makes no sense to anybody else, Lord, but only makes sense in your presence. I pray right now, God, that every student, every leader, God, would feel your presence, be impacted by who you are. They would feel your spirit, God, connecting with theirs, Lord. Even in this moment right now, God, I feel right now, God, situations changing, Lord. I pray, God, in this moment that you would let the sun stand still, Lord. For every these things, Lord.